Look at the remnants of our ancient past. Huge, impossibly heavy stones hauled across deserts, precarious temples carved directly into cliff faces, pyramids erupting from dense canopies. When we stand in the shadow of these monuments, it is hard not to feel a sense of overwhelming mystery. For millions of people, the official archaeological explanations just don't add up. Instead, they look at these marvels and see the fingerprints of lost civilizations, survivors of Atlantis, or even the result of intergalactic intervention. This is the realm of pseudoarchaeology. Its proponents rarely describe themselves as fringe theorists. To their audiences, they are brave truth seekers, fighting to expose a hidden history that a dogmatic, mainstream academic establishment is supposedly trying to suppress. Asking what if is part of human curiosity, but in this space, that question often leads to a specific result. By swapping documented reality for a sci-fi narrative, these theories effectively overwrite the history of the people who actually lived it. Constructing these narratives requires moving outside the scientific method. It begins by stripping artifacts from their original cultural context, pulling isolated objects from different continents to manufacture connections that the local timelines don't support. Throughout history, this technique has been used with very specific intent. Look at North America. Across the continent, massive prehistoric earthworks, like the winding, quarter-mile-long Great Serpent Mound in Ohio, demonstrate an immense scale of indigenous engineering. When 19th-century white settlers encountered these structures, they refused to believe the ancestors of Native Americans were capable of building them. They fabricated a narrative about a vanished ancient European race of mound builders, a myth that justified colonial expansion and the forced removal of indigenous populations. This tactic wasn't isolated to America. In the 1930s, the Nazi Party funded a pseudo-archaeological research branch known as the Ahnenerbe. They sent expeditions around the globe, twisting archaeological finds to manufacture a fake historical record that supported their claim of an ancient Aryan master race. Stripped of its entertaining veneer, fringe archaeology frequently functions as an ideological tool. It works by denying indigenous cultures the credit for their own heritage. Politics isn't the only reason history gets rewritten. In the Middle East, another powerful motive comes into play: the need for divine justification. Certain religious fundamentalist groups reject established methods like carbon dating and the fossil record. Instead, they organize expeditions specifically designed to find physical artifacts that will prove a literal interpretation of Scripture, like the belief that the Earth is less than 10,000 years old, or that a worldwide flood wiped out humanity. You can see this geographic focus on the snow-capped peak of Mount Ararat. For decades, fringe explorers have repeatedly claimed to have found the petrified remains of Noah's Ark hidden near the summit. Yet they have consistently failed to produce any verifiable evidence that satisfies historians or geologists. A similar logic is applied to the Great Pyramid of Giza. Rather than accepting the physical evidence, including ancient papyrus logs, proving it was built as a pharaoh's tomb, fringe theorists argue it was a colossal recovery vault, engineered to survive a biblical deluge. When you start with a dogmatic conclusion and force geological facts to fit it, you aren't doing archaeology. You are erasing the documented lives and achievements of the people who actually carved those stones. Today, however, the most prominent driver of alternative history isn't state ideology or religious fervor. It is an incredibly lucrative mass media industrial complex. In the late 1960s, Swiss author Erich von Däniken published a series of wildly successful books, proposing that ancient humans were essentially helpless without the technological assistance of intelligent extraterrestrials. It birthed a modern pop culture phenomenon. More recently, figures like Graham Hancock have updated the formula. He argues that a globally connected, technologically advanced society predated the last ice age, teaching agriculture and architecture to supposedly primitive hunter-gatherers. These ideas bypass academic peer review entirely because they don't have to prove anything. Cable television networks and streaming platforms gladly broadcast these theories as factual documentaries, knowing that sensational mysteries guarantee high viewership. It is a business model that treats human history as a commodity. By packaging speculation as suppressed truth, The modern pseudoarchaeology industry prioritizes short-term financial gain over established scientific fact. Ultimately, when we hand credit for our past over to aliens or lost empires, we rob early humans of their agency, their intellect, and their remarkable ingenuity. To look at the towering, mathematically precise stonework of the Temple of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza and attribute it to an Atlantean architect is to imply that the Maya people were too primitive to master geometry and engineering on their own. We also see the myth that the Egyptian pyramids just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. The architectural record proves otherwise. Ancient Egyptian tomb design started with flat, mud brick structures called mastabas. Over decades of trial and error, builders began stacking these mastabas into step pyramids. They experimented and calculated, finally refining the angles to achieve the flawless profile of the Great Pyramid. The documented reality that ordinary humans achieved the impossible through raw determination and collaboration is a story that stands on its own without any need for fabricated myths.